Hey everyone, Robert here, author of Expansion Mastery, the practical guide to living a fully engaged life. Are you ready to start living life to the fullest? Are you ready and willing to transform yourself and your life from ordinary to extraordinary? Then let's get started. Welcome, my friends, to the Fully Engaged Life. Welcome back to the show, everyone. This episode is going to begin a brand new series that I'm doing, and it's going to be based on embracing and protecting our humanity, how to live fully engaged in turbulent times. And this is meant to be a very practical application series. So I've provided you with all kinds of practices, especially based in mindfulness. So what I'd like to do now is explain to you how you end up living when you have developed this conscious state of mindfulness on the way to awakening. So you get a better picture of what it is to live a fully engaged life. And through this series, you should understand just how important all of these practices are that I've been sharing with you. My students and clients are both well aware of just how much more there is to the practices, to the idea of expansion mastery and living a fully engaged life than what I'm capable of presenting here on this program. So if you are interested in taking this step by step and going to its depths and receiving actual guided instruction, then I recommend contacting me and becoming a client. But I'm giving as much to you as I can, at least to give you a very solid foundation. And then if you see that this is extremely valuable to you, that it's changing your life, then you can make the practices more formalized and train with me directly. So this practical series is going to revolve around various aspects of our lives as human beings. And right now, it is so important that we embrace and protect our sense of humanity, because it seems that this is being stripped from us right now, that there are agendas in place out in the world that are designed to shift this information age into a technocracy that will destroy our basic sense of humanity. And this is easy to observe. You can see it in so many ways. If your eyes are open even a little bit, and you're looking around at all the things that are taking place in the United States right now especially, but all throughout the world really, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. You already know what I'm talking about. You're tuned in enough to this already. You can feel, you can sense that there's something strange happening. Things aren't right. You feel a little anxious, right? All of this is because of this attack on our humanity. So now is a time more than ever that we must protect that. And because we are living in these turbulent times, many are finding it increasingly difficult to remain calm and live fully engaged because of this. I'd like to begin this series of practical advice for living fully engaged and continuing to awaken regardless of what's taking place in the world, regardless of the insanity and the twisted logic and the inverted truth and all these other things that are going on out there. Living a fully engaged life, living a spiritually based life, doesn't mean that we ignore the external world around us. Indeed, just the opposite. The big difference is that we do not allow it to negatively affect our sense of inner peace. We don't allow it to lower our vibration. We don't allow it to disturb our heart or mind. We do not get pulled into the propaganda, illusions, and distractions. Now, this doesn't mean that we resist it. It doesn't mean that we act in opposition of it. This is the key point to take away from this, is that we become more steadfast, more immovable in what we are doing and who we are becoming. And then all of the craziness of the outside external world cannot affect us. Now, I fully realize that this is far easier said than done. Trust me, I know. And living a fully engaged life doesn't mean that nothing ever upsets us. It means that we do not allow it to consume us or rule over us. Living a fully engaged life is to make deliberate and conscious life choices and to act on those choices. It means no longer surrendering to mindless excuses and being driven by unconscious mental processes, mental conditioning, and propaganda programming. Living a fully engaged life requires a great sense of personal responsibility and the courage to accept that responsibility. This is a responsibility that few people today are willing to accept. So I must ask you, are you willing to accept the responsibility of living a fully engaged life, of being authentic in a very inauthentic world? This new series will cover the practical applications that are the result of waking up and being consciously aware. I hope you find this beneficial. I'm finding that very few spiritually based teachers are offering this type of pragmatic advice. But this is a direct reflection of the old Zen saying that I've shared on numerous occasions with you of taking the ox to the market. We have to be able to take our meditation practices, our tranquil inner self and inner peace, and we have to be able to hold that as much as possible out in the external world. And no, it's just not possible to hold it 100% of the time. It's very challenging to hold it even half of the time or 60 or 70% of the time, right? But the key is to keep increasing this and keeping this sense of inner tranquility, our sense of awakening and mindfulness out in the real world as much as possible. And then our practices include holding that to a greater and greater degree, always striving for 100%, while realizing it's okay to stumble along the way, as long as you continue to progress. In other words, as long as you get better and better and better at it. So the topic of this particular episode is going to focus on maintaining proper health, good health in these odd times that we are in. This revolves around three basic things: natural foods, clean water, and clean air. After all, a healthy body reflects a healthy mind, right? So we've got to be able to keep our body and our mind healthy. And if we look towards traditional Chinese medicine, we can see the theory of vital life force energy, right? What they call qi. So it's nothing mystical. It's not that magical. It's just the energy. It's like electricity sort of thing that animates the body. But within this Chinese medical theory, we have what's called prenatal qi and postnatal qi. And prenatal qi is the life force that we were born with, that we had at the point of our conception. And then postnatal qi is that energy that we take in after we exit our mother, once we are out in the physical world. So when we take in good healthy foods, the nutrients of those foods, there is a certain amount of energy extracted that we take and use to power our life. There's the same thing with the things we drink. There is energy in the things that we drink, especially water. And the same with the air. There's energy that we receive from the air. And all of these forms of energy that we extract from these sources go to helping us maintain a sense of longevity and a better quality to our life. And I'm of the opinion that every little bit helps. And while we can't necessarily control everything around us all of the time, especially these things in our external environment, we can take measures to eat, drink, and breathe as naturally and as cleanly as possible. And this is what I'm suggesting. It's not about fearing the things that are bad for us. It's not about that you can't ever do anything like that. But the key is to minimize it as much as humanly possible. So think about it from this energetic perspective, right? We derive this vital life force energy from the nutrients in the foods we eat, the things we drink, and the air we breathe. So this is what helps sustain us from an energetic perspective as well as a physical perspective. And as we know full well, we use the body and we use the mind in our spiritual practices. So these things are very valuable. And let's face it, it's impossible to live a fully engaged life when you are hindered by ill health, be it physical or mental. When we're in pain or we're otherwise suffering from poor physical health or from the negative effects of poor mental health, living a fully engaged life is going to slip through our grasp. It will not be attainable. So we need to strive to do everything in our power to maintain our physical health and our mental health. And this is one of the deciding factors of whether our life experience is a pleasant one or a very unpleasant one. And as you know, in the Expansion Mastery book, I talk about creating heaven on earth. Well, it's very hard to create heaven on earth when you're suffering physically or mentally, isn't it? So understand that the advice that I'm sharing here is not really advice as such. It's more just me sharing what my wonderful wife and I do in the hopes that it may encourage you, maybe inspire you to do the same or something similar that works for you. Please take this information and tailor it to your own unique life situations. Then it'll be far more valuable to you. So let's address the idea of healthy foods first. My wife and I avoid processed foods as much as we possibly can. We avoid getting the box stuff and bag stuff and all these processed foods. We especially steer clear of anything that's GMO. You can do your research on that for yourself. GMOs are poison. We skip the middle aisles of the grocery store because that's where all that stuff is. And we shop the outer parameter of the store with the vegetables and the fresh meats and all of that stuff. So that's what we do. We get local organic foods as much as we possibly can. And of course, we steer very, very clear from any fast foods. We never, under any circumstances, eat at places like McDonald's or Taco Bell or anything like that. That stuff is poison. It's garbage. It's not real food. And in order to live fully engaged, we have to stop accepting the excuses that we create ourselves for eating stuff like that, for being lazy and mindless and eating this junk. Most of the time in grocery stores, you can find organic foods. Yeah, they cost a few pennies more, but we can't use that as an excuse not to get them. We need to do what it takes in order to stay healthy. So if that means we have to make a few extra bucks so we can spend it on the foods we intake, I think that's money well spent, don't you? And we feel that local farmers markets are some of the best places to shop. You can get some incredible produce there and meat. If you eat meat, you can get some very good choices there. And these things are outside of the system, right? They're outside of the norm. So it's not controlled by some mega corporation. So we find this very important. Now, one of the other things that you can do is to get heirloom seeds and grow your own veggies and things, herbs, whatever. You want to be able to grow some of your own food if you possibly can. And make sure that you get heirloom seeds. Otherwise, you will end up with GMO seeds and you'll end up growing your own food, but it's garbage. Okay? We avoid fad diets and we just eat sensibly. The portion amounts and types of food are different from person to person. We all have different requirements. So my wife and I experimented and we found what our bodies responded to the best. The things that kept us in good health, the things that gave us proper energy, the things that allowed us to stay fit. That's what we did. And that takes some mindful eating. You have to experiment a little bit and see what it is your body takes to. And then once you find what your body responds to, stick with it. Keep it simple and just stay with that. Stop jumping around from this fad to that fad to this fad. You have to understand it's the same thing with diets as it is with fashion. It's what's trendy at the moment. That's not meant to be good for you. That's meant to steer you in a certain direction. It's meant to move the masses, to move the herd in the direction that allows them to be more easily controlled. Remember that living a fully engaged life means to escape the matrix. It means to step outside of the system, to see through the illusion. As long as you are being mindless and eating fast foods, gobbling up the GMOs and processed fake stuff because you think it tastes good, as long as you're doing all that, you are enslaved by the system, by the conditioning and programming that has been given to you. And it's that system that has this country of the United States on more prescription drugs by far than any other country in the world. Think about that. It's no secret that there is a political-based agenda to poison and ultimately control our food supply here in the United States. Do a little research and you will find all of this for yourself. It doesn't take much research, or common sense for that matter, to observe this happening all around us. Government-backed megacorporations are destroying our natural foods and replacing them with their own patented artificial seeds and foods. We need to step outside of their system. We need to see the truth, and we need to eat naturally. This is part of living as a human being, is to eat natural foods that are produced by the earth. When you understand this energetically and vibrationally, you can see how much sense it makes. It has gotten so that fewer and fewer people even know how to cook for themselves. Our children don't even realize that the food is not grown on a grocery store shelf. This is ridiculous and inexcusable. We need to start cooking our meals. We need to peel our vegetables. We need to cut them up. We need to take the time. We need to make the time to eat naturally and be healthy, because that is what is necessary for a human being to be healthy. And then, of course, we can look at the quality of our air. For those people who are living in big, major cities, air quality is not so good. We have to be careful. We have to understand that the air quality is vitally important for our health as well. This becomes especially important and a major focus when you are engaged in meditative practices dealing with breathing exercises. It does us precious little good to work on breathing exercises when the air quality that we are breathing in so fully, so deeply, so completely is contaminated and doing us harm. Again, I would recommend that you do your own research on this, and I also recommend getting yourself a nice room air filter that is capable of removing the dangerous toxins in the air that you're breathing. Now, no, we can't control the air quality all of the time, and we can't control it when we're outdoors at all, but we can choose to spend our time outdoors in nature, out in forests, redwoods, on the mountains, in places like that, around a lake, right? Instead of in a city setting, or where there's a lot of forced heat and air conditioning, right? Those things contaminate the air quality of the room we're in. So just like your automobile, right? If you have a newer car, you have a cabin air filter. And, well, doesn't it make sense to have one in your home? If we need one for our car, doesn't it seem sensible that we should need one for our home now too? I feel this is critical, especially in the room where you meditate and do your breathing exercises. Here in California, we have spare the air days and air alert days, right? Due to the constant wildfires out here. And what that causes is a pretty poor air quality and sometimes absolutely horrific air quality because the smoke that's in the air and blowing around doesn't just contain burnt wood from the forest or vegetation from the ground, but the chemicals that are contained in the homes, in the cars, and all the other things that it ends up burning up. And then we're warned not to go outdoors, to close our windows. Well, you need to have something in your home to help the quality of the air that you're breathing, especially during those times, right? Not to mention that our air is filled with typical airborne contaminants like dust and mold and bacteria, allergens, even viruses. And we are capable of getting very affordable air filtration systems now that are able to remove a great percentage of those things. I think that would make a vast difference in our health overall too, don't you? Now we're going to get to one of the big ones, clean water. This is one of the most important issues right now as the water quality in the United States continues to decline as our infrastructure crumbles. The first thing is to eliminate drinking garbage, such as sodas and juices and other things with sugar, things with artificial colors and flavors, and especially sweeteners. A lot of that is derived from rat poison, and yet people are still chugging it down. So we've got to make more sensible choices. We've got to get away from that, and we've got to get into tea. We need to get into water. We need to get into healthier drinks. Now, I know a lot of people say, oh, there's caffeine in tea. When you're drinking a loose leaf, high quality green tea, the caffeine content is so low, there's nothing to worry about. I know so many people that use that as an excuse to drink garbage instead of a nice quality green tea or black tea. And I find what little bit of caffeine is in tea is still far better than the caffeine that is in coffee. But the first step here is to put down all of the other stuff, especially sports drinks and your Red Bulls and all this garbage. Put that down and start picking up a bottle of water. Start drinking good quality water. I recommend taking a look at things like Fiji and some of the alkaline waters out there. And I don't get paid anything from Fiji or anybody else. I'm giving you the things that I personally choose to use. So we all know that the water supply has been contaminated and in some degrees purposely poisoned. Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's been filled with harmful chemicals and contaminated by pharmaceuticals and pesticides. Many people say, well, I have well water, so it's okay. I think you're wrong. From the studies I've seen, well, you may not have the harmful chemicals that are being dumped into the water by the cities. You are still drinking water that has been contaminated by the pharmaceuticals and the pesticides that have been dumped into the ground. Your well cannot protect you from those things. So don't make assumptions. Make sure and educate yourself. Do some research. We live in the information age, and we can use that to our advantage. We've all heard about the dramatic rise in poor water quality lately. Just look at Michigan. And it's not just Flint, Michigan. It's happening in Portage, Michigan right now. Right now. The very same thing. And many other areas of Michigan. Studies were done in several cities of Michigan, and the results of those studies yielded it that there was no water that was fit for human consumption. How frightening is that? A state mostly surrounded by fresh water, and yet it has got the worst water quality in the nation. This is inexcusable. In Southern California, they're finding that they're dumping dangerous chemicals in the water as well as other places in the U.S. A good water filtration system is absolutely critical for our health at this time. So I mentioned how caffeine is such a worry for people that they won't even drink a good quality green tea. Yet, do you realize that your water has been contaminated with caffeine? That's right, but you're not worried about that, right? You don't worry about taking that out. You're probably getting more caffeine in your water than you're getting out of most teas. Now, if you buy a poor quality tea or a tea that's been infused with caffeine, then you get what you pay for, right? But our water supply has been contaminated with these drugs. The caffeine, we have psychotropic drugs showing up in our water supply. We have estrogen showing up in our water supply. There's a whole list of these things. They're showing up in our water supply because lots of these things are being flushed down the toilet, and from our own waste, our own human waste, it goes through, and they're finding that this is not being removed. These things are not being removed at water treatment plants. This means it's up to us to do it ourselves. And then we have things like the glyphosate, right? We're hearing all kinds of talk about that. Well, that's showing up in our water as well. That's one of the primary contaminators of all of our water. Now, we also have this idea of fluoride. And yes, there is, of course, natural occurring fluoride as a trace mineral that's showing up in our water. And that's okay, that's fine. But that's not the fluoride that so many of us are speaking out against right now. And I've been warning people about this. I can remember explaining this to parents of students in my dojo 25 years ago, almost 30 years ago now. I was telling them about its negative impact then. It calcifies the pineal gland. But when we speak of this dangerous fluoride, we're not talking about natural fluoride. What we're referring to is the industrial waste product that is being dumped into our water. And that is a combination of hexafluorosilicic acid and silicon fluoride, both of which are considered highly toxic chemicals by the EPA. And they're considered to be hazardous waste. Now, does that sound like something that's helping you to keep your teeth healthy? I don't think so. When you consider the fact that we are 70 to 85, 90% water as a human being, you can see just how important water quality is. And when it comes to water, here's something to think about. We take in water one of two ways. The first ways is through ingesting it, right? This is drinking water. And this is taking it in directly by drinking it or cooking with it, washing our food off with it, whatever it happens to be. My wife and I are careful to only drink filtered water, and I won't drink water even at restaurants unless I know it's been filtered, which most places do not offer. Some of the upper scale places, however, do. You have to ask. We have a great, absolutely great countertop water filter that we use. It's gravity fed, so it doesn't require electricity. We can use it even if the power's out. We use this filtered water to make our own ice cubes to cook with, and we use it in our Zojirushi water heater to heat water for tea. We still drink bottled water such as Fiji because that's considered to be one of the better ones that tests have shown anyway. And it contains silica, which is excellent. It gets aluminum deposits and nano-aluminum and stuff out of the brain and flushes that out of the body. It's got some great minerals in it as well. And we also drink high-quality alkaline waters. I think alkaline water is very important to control our pH. The more acidic the human body's pH, the more it is susceptible to cancer. The more alkaline it is, the less susceptible it may be to cancer. There's a lot of research around that sort of thing. So again, maybe do some of your own investigation work if that's something that interests you. The thing with alkaline water is that essential trace minerals minerals are generally removed in the process of making it alkaline. So it may be necessary to add some trace minerals to it, or if you have a water filter that removes these minerals, you'll need to add them in. If you use a good brand of water filter, it usually will not remove those minerals. It will remove everything else, all the contaminants, but it will allow you to have the natural minerals in the water that we require. We need to remember, too, that the second way that we take in water is through absorbing it through the skin. And we have to remember that the skin is an organ, right? So it draws the water in. So it doesn't do us a lot of good to filter our drinking water when we're bathing in it, whether you're taking a bath or a shower. I mean, imagine when you start to look at the research and you see all the contaminants in our water, and you realize that you're blasting yourself with that in the shower, right? It's not so good. So we want to realize that pouring all these harmful chemicals, pesticides, and pharmaceutical drugs all over our body where it can be absorbed is probably not the most productive thing we can do, right? Doesn't sound very appealing to me. So we also got a very nice shower head with a filter to prevent bathing in this toxic water. And it is a tremendous difference. I highly recommend this sort of thing. So in this way, we're interacting with water as naturally, as purely as we possibly can. And this isn't a big deal. This stuff's easy to use. It's pretty inexpensive and takes only minutes to set up. Interacting with water is a vital part of our humanity because we're made up of mostly water. So I think this is one of the most important things to do. This is just my opinion, but it's one of the most important things to do is make sure you're drinking adequate amounts of water. Make sure that that water is clean, that you've removed all of the contaminants and toxins. And the same with your shower. Make sure that any water you use has been filtered. Make sure that it's as pure as it can get. And here's one more thing to consider, and I'm well aware that many people may be resistant to hearing this, but it's the truth, so that's what I'm going to share. In spirituality, our physical and mental health are indispensable. If we look at our mental health, as I've stated several times in the past, illicit drugs of any kind do not enhance your spiritual practices. They give you a completely fake, phony, and false experience that reinforces delusion. Just as the body must be free of drugs, so too must the mind be free of such things. Many drugs, whether illicit or pharmaceutical, interfere with our body's natural processes, such as the flow of vital energy. They certainly interfere with the mind's ability to transcend itself. The point is this: if we're bringing in dangerous chemicals that negatively impact both our physical and mental health, how can we possibly expect to succeed at our spiritual practices? How can we expect to succeed in meditation? And so many of these pharmaceutical drugs have negative physical impacts as well as negative mental impacts. So our practices are trying to work and they're meeting the resistance of these things. And I'm not saying go off of your medications or whatever. You got to consult your physician with anything. What I'm saying is do your best to become free of those. Neither my wife nor I are on any prescription medications at all. The only thing we take are supplements, very high quality supplements that help us pick up where modern foods, even organic natural foods, are lacking in the amount of minerals needed, the amount of nutrition needed for a human being to be healthy. So we use supplements to add to that. But imagine, right? So we get ourselves in a place where we are drug-free. We are not on any pharmaceuticals. We are not taking anything illicit at all, ever. And then we end up bringing those very chemicals into ourselves by drinking the water, by making ice cubes, by rinsing off our vegetables, by showering. See how it's like a no-win situation? unless you become mindful of these things and then take action to prevent them as much as you possibly can. We've got many things working against us in the modern world when it comes to spiritual awakening, spiritual development. We've got all of this. We've got all of the electromagnetic field disruptions and pollution as well. But that's a topic for another episode. But we have to start somewhere. And one of the easiest areas that we have control over, that we can start to change right now, today, is in the foods we eat, the things we drink, and yes, even the air we breathe. We can control that at least within our environment. And if nothing more, we can at least control that within the room that we do our breathing and meditative practices in to enhance the quality of those practices. Hopefully you are able to recognize how having contaminated and literally poisoned food supply, water supply, air supply inhibits, and for many people could possibly prohibit, the ability to experience this consciousness shift. So to all of you that are already doing this, I commend you. That is excellent, and I fully expect that you will have far greater results than those who do not pay attention to such things with your practices, as well as your overall health and well-being. I encourage you to wake up, to open your eyes, to stop accepting excuses and accepting laziness, and make the effort necessary to eat naturally, drink naturally, and breathe as naturally as we possibly can. And in the meantime, make sure and visit me at www.expansionmastery.com. You can check out some blog posts there. You can also pick up your signed copy of Expansion Mastery, the practical guide to living a fully engaged life, as well as some incredibly powerful programs that I have there. Please go there, support what we're doing, support the consciousness shift. Make sure that you are sharing this podcast. I know I've had some of you contacting me, telling me you're doing that, and I cannot express to you the amount of appreciation that I feel for your efforts. Thank you so much. Keep it up. Together we can do things that will help this consciousness shift. And it starts with each one of us, and from there we can spread it out. And we know this is being censored on certain social media platforms. So make sure that you are sharing it with people that you know, that you care about, that you love, so that they have a chance to participate in the great consciousness shift as well. Until next time, my friends, I wish you the very best in your practices and your life. Take care.